Today I'd like to talk to you about method called Zersetzung. Translated in English, it says decomposition, and it's a part of psychological warfare technique, primarily utilized by the STASI. The primary objective of the STASI was to intimidate dissidents, in addition to other methods such as gathering intelligence and counterintelligence. The STASI not only used prisons to accomplish this, but also employed deceptive techniques known as operational psychology. I recently had the chance to travel to Berlin. And Berlin is the capital city of spies and espionage. I have an opportunity to spend a few days learning about history, not only in this city but through the entire country of Germany by reading, listening and studying them. On top of this, I have opportunity to be the part to talk to the professionals and experts in a Deutsche Spy Museum in Berlin. And one of the subjects that I have discussed with you previously has caught my interest in particular. It's called Zersetzung, or psychological warfare, translated decomposition. I'd like to welcome you all to the live battlefield. So hello, all of you risk takers and truth seekers, and welcome to the live battlefield, where we explore life's biggest challenges and victories. For those who don't know me, my name is Bekes, and I hold the Guinness World Record for the longest live audio broadcast. As well, I spent 1,800 consecutive combat days in war fighting for democracy and freedom, literally. My professional career includes working in the military, security, intelligence sector, and diplomatic intelligence. And I'm also a best-selling author and have a passion for podcasting to share my knowledge, your knowledge, life experience, so we can all learn better. And in today's episode, we will discuss one of the most brutal, well-studied and applied psychological warfare against civilian population. That method is known as Zersetzung, or decomposition. Let's dive in. To understand Zersetzung, there's 4 stages of human persecution. For those who don't know, the Stasi was a East German secret police. It's not just secret police. Stasi was more Minister of Security. They have according to the archives and everything else, they control every aspect of the life in Eastern Germany, from secret police, policing, the military, counterintelligence, intelligence. But what the Stasi was really brutal about, and they take a very much pride about, it is Zersetzung, decomposition. One of the part of the psychological warfare where they don't apply the pressure of just the physical pain, but some other methods. As I say, according to estimates, between 170,000 to 280,000 people endured that psychological and physical torture as a result of political persecution in Eastern Germany and the Soviet occupation zone between 1945 and 1989, when, as we know, Berlin Wall has been succumbed to the people. Now imagine that for the moment. However, let's examine these stages of persecution in chronological order. Stage 1, or initial stage. That's the first stage, which ran from 1945, the year when the Berlin fell in Second World War, has been liberated by the Russians, Americans, British and French. The Soviet Union special camps and prisons in the area it's occupied from the 1945 to 1950 marked the beginning of the persecution. Out of approximately 127,000 inmates, nearly 700 faced executions, and more than a third perished during their confinement. Gone, 1/3, a little bit more than 1/3. We come to the phase 2. The second stage encompasses the years from 1949 through the 1972. And why is this important? Well, during this time, authorities intimidated and imprisoned dissidents, subjecting them to the lengthy prison sentences and harsh conditions, such as physical assaults, day-long interrogations, solitary confinement, standing without water, and starvation. So it's all this self-inflicting pain. It's a punishment. I don't give you water, I don't give you food, but you need to stand. It was not unusual for inmates to be afraid of dying and use the fear as a leverage to get confessions. Now, following the construction of the Berlin Wall, for those who don't know, the Berlin Wall, when it was erected, the East German government says, people of East Germany built that wall. That wall is not just a reserve for the Berlin itself. The entire East Germany has been sealed off from the Western Germany, which was a NATO, from the Western society, but as well the Eastern German guards and police, they're monitoring other borders towards the Eastern Europe, particularly to Hungary, particularly to the Poland, and list goes on. So it's not just being reserved towards the Western society, but they stipulated that the Berlin Wall was erected by the people of East Germany, by the workers. Now, following the construction of the Berlin Wall, individuals face a persecution for attempting to flee the Republic. That's the reason why they built, facing accusations of espionage, voicing criticism of the government, or initiating and funding anti-state organization. Needless to say that after phase 2 comes the phase 3. And that third phase was one of the most brutal. Why is that? Because the third phase from 1972 to 1989 saw decline in the frequency of physical attacks. They used a more subtle form of psychological blackmail to force confessions or collect information about more suspect. There is nothing more in communism important for the political party and the secret police than to create anxiety amongst the people. When you don't know who's going to report you, who's going to say what against you. That is psychological warfare. When in peaceful times, you don't know who is spying on you, who is working for government. When I was in Berlin, I found out there was a group of official informants, but the number of unofficial informants was 10 times fold. Was even more, 10 times fold. Let's go speak about phase 3. During this time, the threats of violence and physical torture declined. Rather, the East Germany increasingly turned to invisible forms of pressure in an attempt to improve its standing internationally and deflect criticism of its alleged violations of human rights, because that was Germany being accused all the time. Now, of course, the third phase comes to the last phase, the fourth phase. And that phase is from 1989 to the present. And this has been the strategy following the peaceful revolution with an excess of offenders and deficiency of victims. So it's the end of these things. However, people are still carry that burden and the marks of those times. Zersetzung and imprisonment for political reasons. You must understand that in East Germany, more than any other European society before, was under constant surveillance by secret police. And trust me, when I saw the technology they use, even Western society can be ashamed of. Both public and private people worked with the Ministry of the State Security in an official capacity. Both public and private people work with the Ministry of State Security. They were both spied on. A complex web of fear, control, and mistrust developed. Can you draw the parallel with the times today? Those who were part of that privacy were frequently the ones doing the surveillance. The East German Ministry of State Security, better known MFS, uses a strategy known as a Zersetzung to combat potential and actual adversaries before, during, after, or in place of incarceration. So before they arrest you, before, during, or after, they will apply Zersetzung. Zersetzung is not just reserved once when you're being arrested. If they identify you as a person that you possibly politically will try to destabilize the country, you try to bring the new supporters, or you try to organize any rally, they will start applying Zersetzung. But that was psychological warfare. Even today, you can see it. Zersetzung was entirely psychological instrument of tyranny, meant to cause uncertainty, panic, and terror while undermining people's self-sense. According to Zersetzung, the state was superior to individuals and society. So government and the people or country, it's above individuals. I was living in communism. In fact, all apparatus members were required to assist the STASI. Everybody was required to assist the STASI. Employees of the STASI first started out in the private residences of perpetrated state enemy. The intended recipients needs to be initially unsettled in their own life. STASI agents broke into private residence covertly multiple times, taking items out and rearranging them bit by bit until the resident started to question his sanity. They bugged entire apartments and phones. Guys, I was there. So STASI, I want you to understand why the STASI is being mentioned so many times, because STASI is the only one modern intelligence agency being dismantled in peaceful. Because 1989, when I was in Berlin, I was being told this. Once when the Berlin Wall fell, STASI people didn't know what to do. The government was changing. It was very unsettling, a very uneasy time. And before reunification, people of Berlin ran into STASI head office, which was being one of the most unsettled places you want to enter. Because when I was there, when I saw the building, it was so intimidating. It was, you can hear the screams coming out of the walls. The people used to be worked there and down the basement being tortured. The people of Berlin run into STASI head office, and they start collecting the documents, preventing the STASI officers to destroy the whole archive. Once when the STASI Germany is reunified, NATO and particularly Americans walk into this STASI paperwork and technology and everything what they did. To the interviews, they learn how the modern intelligence agencies and secret police actually operated, because it was not destroyed. Let's go come back for that. This what the STASI did it. So instead of they applying the physical pain and the pressure, arrests and making people uneasy, what will they do? Will they play with your sanity? And then when I was in Berlin, when I saw how they built the door in the 70s and 80s with eavesdropping devices, you can't change the battery, so the entire door will be filled with the batteries and the bug, so it can work for a couple of years. They can listen to you, and you think nobody's there in the front of the door, but the door itself is a big microphone. They bugged entire apartments and phones. To clarify, the purpose of bugging everyone is solely for their own amusement. That's what it is. To clarify, the purpose of bugging everyone is solely for their own amusement. There was a targeted encroachment on one's private space. The STASI also had technique for infiltrating intimate connections. It dealt with the breakdown of personal and family ties. That's what they knew. Breakdown personal and family ties. It is best to foster mistrust by disseminating rumors such as those concerning perpetrated extramarital affairs. Your husband, we heard, I heard, they heard. It's a hearsay. Defamation and discrimination also contribute to occurrences of professional failures. I want you to take the note. The Zersetzung aimed to induce chaos, immobility, and disintegration in adversary groups and psychological unease, social seclusion and reputational damage in individuals. It's hard to do this in today's times, except towards few, because in East Germany you could apply on society, because it was confined society. Zersetzung measures always tailored to the unique personality structure of the individual targets, addressed the relevant weaknesses and they of so-called enemies of socialism. Zersetzung sought to combat opposing ideologies, profoundly disrupt dissidents and socialist opponents, personalities, and through psychological disintegration, and force a particular person to deal with himself on continual basis. That's what it is. Now we can picture the impact that had on the people. The situation deteriorated to such an extent that some affected individuals choose to take own lives. That's what they did. They will drive you into insanity. There's an extra jail time for Zersetzung measures. frequently resulted in serious psychological harm. Prison itself is confined space. For all the horror of the prison, at least the victim of political persecution knew where he was. Prison. The Zersetzung victims endured the ongoing attacks, uncertainty, and feelings of insecurity. When you're in prison, you don't have the guards only, but you have criminals. And that leads us to operational psychology. The concept of operational psychology laid the groundwork for the state-planned Zersetzung. The GDR, or East Germany Ministry of the State, MFS, employed this phrase. The state security apparatus intentionally exploited scientific methods from allied domains, including general, social, and clinical psychology. At the Potsdam Golem Department of Operational Psychology, senior officers studied psychological techniques, so the government spent time, money, resources to teach security staff psychological techniques. And what those techniques included: number one, getting confessions while under arrest, gathering intelligence both domestically and internationally, acquiring informal or unofficial employees, and connecting with and winning the trust of youth is crucial. You know that expression, hearts and minds? That's what it is. So that's how they teach them psychology, to get those four elements out of the person. Zersetzung measures. They are the measures in that decomposition psychological warfare. Prior to arrest, there was always some heightened repression. Always. Most arrests happened without notice. Unpredictably and abruptly, they took a specific number of individuals into custody, mostly on the street. Believe it or not, a dark van in a cramped jail drove the arrested man around for hours until he lost his sense of direction. Then followed the dazzling brightness, the total undressing, the painstaking examination of every opening, the confusion between the number and the name, and the imprisonment in a sterile cell. I've been there. It is the horror, sophisticated horror on your mind. The use of specific interrogation techniques in conjunction with solitary confinement in the notorious state security detention facilitates was the main focus. It was a main focus. There's no windows, soundproof, 2 by 3 meters empty cell housed by detainees in solitary confinement. Day or night, brilliant neon lights blaze. It had just the neon lights. Except for a small bed with a woolen blanket and stinking pail. There was nothing in the cell, and there was no way to do anything. So you have nothing except a bed. You have the neon lights, no lights from outside. You don't know if it's a day or night. But they have regulations, as I say, and their regulations were very, very strict. Number one, there is no interaction with the outside world. Only lying in bed at night. Don't talk to yourself. No exercise, and there should be no more than 5 steps per direction. No more than 5 steps per direction. But hold on a moment, not even a little self-talk. You can't even talk to yourself. They were so afraid that they couldn't think. Literally, just picture that fear. That is the real fear. You're living in a fear. You're wrapped in a fear. And they have isolation, deliberately induced anguish and utter resignation. That's what it is. As I say, in prison, you're not just surrounded with the guards, but with criminals. The guards could monitor the conduct at any moment through the door's spy hole. You know, you have that on the door. No cameras, spy hole, which means employs the guard to check on you. The prisoners had all their senses completely cut off. Depending on individual instability, in this situation, evident symptoms can start to show up to 48 hours. Guys, 48 hours after his isolation, including loss of sense of time and space, inability to reason, apathy, melancholy, abrupt panic attacks, and even severe hallucinations. In response to this event, many convicts experienced either total resignation or extreme terror. There's no third. The prison also engaged in drug manipulation. That's a place where they drug you. Sometimes questioning inmates took weeks. For that to take place, needs to drug you. This intentional seclusion was methodical. Everything what the Stasi was doing was methodical, from the start to the end. Strict oversight measures also ensured that detainees would not encounter other detainees en route to interrogation. So they can't communicate, guys. In prison, people see the other prisoners. That was being organized. You can't talk to nobody, and you have only guards, and you don't talk to guards. Many inmates expressed that they constantly felt the need for questioning because that was the only human touch. There was a reconciliation within the group of torturers. Can you imagine this? Reconciliation within the group of torturers. The Stasi deliberately cultivated conditions of extreme powerlessness and hopelessness. That's what it is. You have no powers, you have no hope. Subsequently, during the persecuted personality investigations, this method was combined with the state's ideological and pseudo-moral devaluations. Happened all across all communist countries. They knew how to do this. The one thing before continue, I want you to understand something, that prisons in communism was not being just a place to torture people, but when you get out, that you be that beacon of new morals and why people should embrace the communism. Because they knew once when they release in society, you don't want to go back. You're going to talk about communism in such a great way. So it's more educational as well. Furthermore, because the prisoner was eager to divulge information on other people, at some point it was assumed that they were morally tainted. Political prisoners and other psychological torture victims frequently endured complex and unpleasant patterns of the stimuli. There were humiliations as well as traumatic relationships with psychologically astute interrogators who were able to create a feeling of absolute hopelessness and powerlessness in prisoners. Those interrogators has been highly educated by the East Germany state. One purposely created uncertainty about the welfare of one's own family of political friends. That was always created, welfare of one's own family or political friends. No escape from this. Another thing is, which is not easy to speak about, is the sexual attacks on political prisoners. After forcing confession in this way, they were convicted and sent to the notorious prisons of Eastern Germany. Violence, including sexual assaults on political prisoners, took place there regularly. Government was observing. They frequently formed alliances with the serious criminals. That's how it is. It's not just you going in prison. They send you in prison amongst the guards and the criminals who are going to be in the service of the government. Political prisoners were often at the mercy of brutal guards who also formed coalitions with their fellow prisoners. Criminal prisoners assigned themselves to supervise political prisoners, even during forced prison labor. We can add the following to the list of hardships and agonies endured by those subjected to political persecution under SED regime. That's a Germany political party. We can exclude eavesdropping, monitoring, and use of covert tactics aimed at causing unrest and destabilizing individuals are all part of that process. Absolutely. Jerry's strong sense of guilt, it's another thing. It was always that strong sense of guilt. State security arrested and tortured in isolation, so people don't know what's happening to your friends or your family members. Separation from spouse and children, along with concerns for the welfare of the one own family, it's a common occurrence. So they will separate you from your kids, from your wife, your husband, and they will give you that sense of guilt about their welfare. During their stay in prison, inmates and all prison staff assaults on their mental and physical well-being left them feeling threatened and afraid for their own lives and physical integrity. That's how the Zersetzung works. Being forced to work in a prison that possesses a health risk and where the private employees refuse to work if their standard is not met, additional sanctions will be applied. Simple. After being imprisoned, tortured person was released from prison followed by re-traumatization. Re-traumatization can occur following a reunion, such as interactions with previous interrogators. These various forms of stress that prisoners endured are all considered forms of psychological torture. Psychological torture now can cause just as much trauma as a physical torture. The difference is that psychological torture leaves scars for life. As I strolled through the Berlin, I couldn't help but the sense of being observed and truly being heard. Someone is listening to me. Well, who knows? Let me know in the comment section below, are you the victim of psychological torture, and how? And let's go learn from each other how this works. What do you know about psychological warfare, psychological torture? Feel free to subscribe, share, like and comment. Thank you for watching.